particular time. There's a lot of ways to scale a mountain. Okay, just as a metaphor, a year and a half ago I climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, and it was a great experience to spend that time on the mountain, both physical challenges and mental challenges and altitude challenges. And but there's 6 different ways to get to the top that are non-technical, and then about another 2 or 3 if you're a technical climber. And so I think, you know, your question is sort of like climbing a mountain. Is, you know, there's methods that you've heard your band directors speak, you've heard your private lesson teachers, you've heard Masterclass teachers tell you about. What you want to try and do is find what truly works for you, okay? And one very interesting thing that I've started doing with my students is each semester we use a different warm-up routine book. There's 4 that I sort of like quite a lot. I like the Dave Vining Daily Routines. I like the Remington Method. We use the Brass Gym. We use the Trop Chops, and then I also have a sort of book that's in progress and stuff like that. And so we use those each different semester across 5 semesters. And it's been very interesting. At first, my students were a little bit sort of like, I don't understand why I'm doing this one. Isn't it good enough? And I said, well, that works fine for you, but try this other one. And what you want to create is the, you know, whatever works for you. Take this exercise from this one, this exercise from that one, this exercise from that one, so that you can create that. And for you, as far as practicing the technical things, there's a lot of skill sets that you can do. Some very easy ones to say are you practicing the scales, major scale patterns that are in that particular key? Are you doing the diatonic patterns? Are you doing the scales in thirds? You know what both those are?
Yes. Okay.
Everybody know what diatonic patterns are? It's where you go from 1 to 1, then 2 to 2, 3 to 3, but stay within key. So that's a good one. Scales in thirds. In mine, there's a really sinister thing called scales in 4ths, 5ths, 6ths, and 7ths. We have to go through, and it's particularly unpleasant. I don't deny, but it makes the rest of your music better. You know, obviously there's the slow method of working through things. A lot of times we'll also do. Is there a particular part in Beautiful Colorado that's particularly challenging?
Not in Beautiful Colorado specifically, but this is my junior recital semester, and one of the other pieces I'm playing is
What's the other piece?
The Spark Euphonium Concerto.
Okay.
There's a lot of notes in that.
Why don't we just look at a little bit of that just while we're on that topic? I know that you were going to do Beautiful Colorado, but we can talk a little bit about some of this. So, like, so what makes this concerto particularly difficult is actually that it appears to be written in C major by the key signature, but it is not.
No, it's not.
So what key is it in?
I'd say depending on where you are in the piece, it differs here and there. At the beginning, it kind of flirts around a key of A flat major.
Okay.
Then later on, there's hints of some of the sharper keys like B major or E major. So that's later on in this section here.
Right.
For the rest of the piece.
Yeah. So if I asked you to put $20 on the stand here and make a wager with me whether you could play the A flat scale and what did you say this section was? E major?
Yes.
Okay.
If
I asked you to play those scales for me 5 times without making a mistake, and then only 3 times in thirds, would you risk losing your $20?
I would certainly not.
Okay. So that's one of the things that you want to make sure also that you're comfortable. You occasionally hear me talk about vocabulary. Okay, is make sure that you've got the vocabulary so that when you get to the SAT, you know what the words mean.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the same thing. If we were to go through and count all the relationships in here that are scales or thirds, okay, just those 2 basic parts. I mean, what do you think that is out of here? 90% of this technique through here?
It's got to be.
Okay, so you want to try and work away from a piece of music. One of the things that I always talk about is I don't like repertoire-driven practice. I like what I call tools-based practice, okay? And that's exactly what I'm talking about here is make sure that you've got that A-flat major scale solid. Make sure that you've got your E major scale solid and in those different varieties so that when they show up here, that's going to be great. Next question I would ask you, do you have your major 7th chords or minor 7th chords and diminished 7th chords in these particular keys comfortable?
No.
Okay. Okay? So that's going to be another thing, sort of like, again, I like to use the SAT as an example, even though we hate standardized tests. It's sort of like, man, if you don't know what that word is, it's like, slow is to fast as, I have no idea what this word is. I guess I'll just guess randomly, but I've got a 1 in 5 chance type of situation. So, that's one of the things that you want to look at. Some other sort of techniques that we can go. Let's take this little section here in E. Okay.
Particularly unpleasant, isn't it?
Yeah. Okay. So one technique that I like to do is it's called a jazz rhythm. So what we're going to take all the 16th notes and we're going to overcomplicate things. My students will tell you that I really like to make their lives difficult and miserable. Okay. And it's all out of love, really and truly. Okay. And the reason that is that if I can make their practice more difficult than performance, then performance will be easier. Okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to play a little game here. Bum ba ba dee ba dee ba dee ba dum bing ba ba dee ba 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 dee ba dee ba ba dee ba da ba dee ba dee ba dee bee ba ba dee. I can make the whole audience snap along, but I know there's a lot of Euphonium players out there. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for me. So just try that one time in the swing rhythms. All right. Ba, boo, ba, dee, ba, dee. 1, 2, ready, go. There you go. Yeah, that's okay. Try it one more time. It's funky, isn't it? Yeah. It's really, it'll scramble your brain. Okay, there we go. One more time. 1, 2, ready, That's okay. Now, A sharp. How comfortable are you with that?
It takes me a sec to look at it and think about it for a moment, but...
How easy would it be for you if I just did this on the music? Don't tell them what I wrote, because they're not here receiving the information. You know what that is and what it means? You don't know what that means?
I don't.
Over an A sharp?
No.
What's fingering for A sharp?
Oh, got it. Right. Sorry.
I wrote a 0 over the A sharp to remind him that it's open. Right. Okay, because that's your conundrum, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and the other thing is to always ask yourself, especially in technical situations, what's the problem? On one level you can say, well, it's a little bit of E major. You can also say that, that A sharp, man, how often do you see A sharp?
Not usually.
Philip Spark, how come you didn't write it as a B flat, man? Come on, help a brother out.
Exactly.
Okay? But why don't you write a 0 over there and make your life a little bit easier? So start on the F sharp in the swing rhythm. A little bit higher, 2, ready, there it is. Again, one more time, and make sure you start right on the beat, because it's 3 clicks and then you're in.
Yeah.
1, 2, ready, and 1, 2. Good. All right, here's the funny part. You haven't missed the A sharp in the 2 times that you played it.
Yeah.
Kudos. Here's the funny thing. Did you guys notice that, well, you guys might not know this as well as us looking up here, but each time after you actually played the A sharp correctly, his brain was like, this doesn't feel right. I have no idea what to do on the next beat because normally I'm not playing this note open.
Yeah.
And that happened both times. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing. Can you tell me why it's a good thing and a bad thing?
It's a good thing because I'm starting to break the habit that I've formed for myself.
And why is it a bad thing?
It's a bad thing because now I'm not thinking about it, so I haven't really planned ahead what I'm going to do after that change comes.
And you've had a lot of negative repetitions of this, haven't you?
Yeah.
One of the keys, especially in the more complex a piece is, the slower that you want to practice it at first.
Yeah.
And I would love to tell you that there is some type of special magic to learning how to play technical, hard stuff. Okay? There's a couple things like what I talked about before. Okay? But really and truly, it's about positive repetition. And if you choose to play it with negative repetitions, you're only So, you know, the first time, my rule of thumb is I sight read through a piece twice. And then I bracket it off like exactly what you've done here. And then I force myself, okay? You know, I need to play it so slow that I can play it right at least 4 out of 5 times. It really should be 5 out of 5, but I'm not going to lie to you and say that, oh, I do that. Not that good. Okay? So, but that's where you want to be. And the more difficult the piece is, the more patient that you have to be. And know that it's all about your batting average. Okay? You know, again, just like the little bet that I said about $20 for you to play an A flat major scale and an E major scale. I mean, you should eat my breakfast for that, shouldn't you? If you're working on this piece, you'd be like, absolutely, Mr. Fry. I would love to do that. Please. And I'll be like, uh-oh, I probably should have bet him. Yeah. $20. Okay? So that's one of the things that you can do. Now, the other thing that you can do with the swing rhythms is actually to invert the swing. So instead of going long, short, long, short, long, short, long, you go bum, short, long, short, long, short, long, boom, like this. Well, let's try that together in the inversion. 1, 2, ready, go. Okay, and the rule of thumb, oh, it's particularly unpleasant. Can you tell me why it's more unpleasant than the other one?
Because we're not as used to hearing it.
Yes, we play dotted 8 16th rhythms a lot more than 16th dotted 8.
Yeah.
Okay, so which one should you practice more?
Probably the 16th dotted 8.
Matter of fact. All right, so let's do it one more time. We'll do it straight swing and then inverted swing, and then we're going to play it without any swing and just see what it feels like. It's not going to be perfect. I'm not going to tell you that it's going to be that much better. But the main thing that I want you to notice is how you're able to concentrate more effectively and how this feels so much more friendly on the last time.
Yeah.
Okay? All right, so ba-ba-dee-ba-dee-ba. 1, 2, ready? We need to do that one more time slower. 1, 2, ready? All right, now invert it. 1, 2, ready? Okay, now play it straight. Ready and go. Yeah. I didn't start on the first page correctly. There it is. Ready and go. Yeah. Moments where it sounds relaxed, okay? And the first couple times you played it, there weren't even 8th notes that sounded relaxed, okay? So there's some good progress in there. The other thing that's both is good is that you're stumbling after you play a good measure or a good beat, okay? And that tells me one of two things: either your concentration isn't very good, or that your muscle memory is so freaked out by playing it correctly that it doesn't know what to do. If I had to make a bet, I'd bet that it's the second of the two.
It's definitely the second too.
Okay.
I've definitely put in a lot more work on Beautiful Colorado than I have on this.
Well, yeah, but not just about the amount of work. It's about the number of positive repetitions that you've done.
Yeah.
Okay. And if you played it with mistakes, then you've not really trained your muscle memory correctly. Versus if you play it slowly and accurately, you have positive repetition. Okay. So it's the bottom of the 9th, 2 outs, World Series, Game 7. And you got 2 guys on the bench. You got some guy that's pinch hitter that's been batting 650 and another guy that's only batting 225. Who are you going to send?
Probably the pinch hitter, who's batting 600.
The guy with better batting average. Okay. So who are you sending to your concert?
The guy with the 200 batting average.
Yeah. So it's not going to turn out very well for you as a manager, just so you know.
No, it is not.
I think the owner's going to have some words with you on Monday morning.
Oh, right.
Okay. So that's a couple things. So you got the jazz rhythms through there. The other thing is to go and do one beat sprints. So what you're going to do, you're going to do one beat at a time. Dun da da dum, ba da 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 dum, ba da dum bum, bum ba da dum, bum bing bum, ba da 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 ding. And the concept of this is going to be beyond you for right now on this particular section. But the concept is that you want to try and have, when you're trying to increase speed on technique, if you can't do it accurately and functionally on one beat at a faster tempo, there's no way you're going to string together 16 or 18 beats, are you?
Yeah.
Okay. So it starts with a one-beat sprint, and then, of course, after that's comfortable, then it expands out to a two-beat sprint. Okay. So do you guys understand this? Okay, just making sure. So, and what you want to ask yourself whenever you're practicing technique is, what tool are you using to fix the problem? Okay. I don't know if you guys have ever had a situation at home where, your dad or mom, something wrong in the house. I don't know, let's say it's plumbing related because that's really messy. Okay? And dad, we'll use dad, it's good. So dad's sort of like, I've seen that special tool down at Home Depot, but it's like $60. I've got to have something in the garage that'll be close enough for me to get that tool off and fix this. I'm sure it's got to be close enough. So goes in the garage, gets stuff, comes in. Hey, son, can you come in here for a second? I need some help. Okay? Anybody have this play out in your house before? And then all of a sudden you hear bad words and stuff, and hear water running, and you're like, uh-oh, what happened? Dad's like, shut off the water! Shut off the water! Okay? And then, of course, he's like, oh, I tried to do this, I didn't have the right tool. Crap. Now I got to go buy a replacement part and the special tool. So then he goes down to Home Depot, gets a replacement part and the special tool, comes back and fixes it, and then he can take a shower and everything like that. And you're just sort of like, what do you want to say to your dad? Like, Dad, why didn't you just go get the special tool in the first place, right? You know? So for you, what type of tools, are you using in this? If you're just trying to go through it like a bull or like a ram, we're green for you guys tonight, just so you know.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to go through it that way, it's not going to work, okay? Or it's not going to be efficient, okay? And then the other thing to think about this is that, how many of you guys know Yogi Bear? What's his slogan? Well, yeah. And then he says he's smarter than the
Average bear.
average bear. Now, here's the question for you. As a practicer, you guys are here, you're music majors. Anybody a performance major? A couple performance? Okay, great. So, yeah. Okay.
Big stuff last semester.
Okay. So the other thing that you want to think about is that if you're not practicing smarter than the average bear, you're out of luck. I'll just tell it to you straight up. How many other kids are working on performance degrees in loads of other schools all over the country? If you're not practicing smarter, harder, more intelligently, how can you expect to get better than everybody else? Okay. So that's a very introspective question for you to ask yourself and evaluate. What is my practice technique like? And am I being smarter than the average bear? There was a Euphonium friend of mine, a guy named Lance Leduc, and he did an interview. He won the U.S. Air Force band job, and then he actually retired and actually played trombone and euphonium with Boston Brass. I think he just finished a little while ago. But anyway, great player, very intelligent, and very entrepreneurial as well. And he did a little interview on his audition. And he said, at the very beginning of the interview, he said, I really felt confident that I was going to win the audition. And and the interviewer was sort of like, well, that's a little bold to say, that you were going to win the euphonium position in the U.S. Air Force Band where there's all these euphonium players. And he said, yeah, I don't mean it in that way. I mean it that I felt like, I was practicing 6 hours a day on excerpts. I was listening to recordings of military bands and studying scores for an additional 2 hours. And I was doing like an hour of my own recording study time, and I did this for, 2 to 3 months before the audition. And as I was coming into the last week, I was like, I just can't imagine anybody else was working as hard as I was, or as intelligently as he was. And I think it's pretty valid. I mean, how many people do you know practice 6 hours a day and do score study and listen to recordings, not passively, but actively, 2 hours? Okay. If they are, they're probably knocking down a job pretty soon. Okay. And that's a success story. How many of you guys know the book by Malcolm Gladwell called The Outliers? Okay. How many of you have actually read the book? Okay, great, excellent. I always assign a book about goal setting, success, being an entrepreneurial musician every semester. And all the kids are always like, you have to do a book report, Mr. Frey? And I'm like, absolutely. Just wait till next year. I'm in charge of the entire brass area. And you want to know what every brass student's going to do? A book report. And they'll love it. They'll like it afterwards. So one of the main concepts of Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers is the rule of 10,000 hours. Okay? So this basically says that you need to put in 10,000 hours to feel comfortable doing something and be good at it. It's absolutely true. Okay? I did my calculation of undergrad and master's student and came out to like 9,200 hours of practice. Okay? It's crazy. I had no idea that I'd wasted. I mean, learned so much. Okay? No, it's absolutely true. And this is 100% real life. I've talked with friends that, A, don't know this book, so it's a great question to ask them and do the quick calculation. And generally the people that are what I call a tier 1 musician are the people that have won a great job, really successful, at the top of their field. Generally, their answers have been during undergrad and graduate school that they've been somewhere in the 9,000 to 12,000 hours. And this is violinist, pianist, saxophone, trumpet, percussion, okay? I've got a lot of friends all over. And what's terribly interesting to me isn't that fact. It's what I call the tier 2 players that are generally struggling, very confused, upset, feel that they've been wronged at auditions and everything like that. And they don't get the call for all the freelance work. And generally when we calculate their hours, it's sort of in the 5,000 to 7,000 range. And I've not found anyone that didn't fit the perfect stereotype of that. I'm sure there are people, but my question for you as performance majors, are you working enough? And are you working intelligently? So that would be a big thing. For me, when I was in, just since we're talking about practice hours here, my sophomore, junior, senior year, 5 to 6 hours a day, Monday through Saturday, 5 hours on Sunday, and that didn't count ensembles. I played euphonium in the band, tuba in the orchestra, tuba in the brass quintet, euphonium, tuba, euphonium quartet, trombone and trombone choir, euphonium, tuba, euphonium ensemble, tuba, euphonium quartet. I calculated that normally on a normal Monday through Friday that I had about 11 to 13 hours of face time every day. Okay? And I'm not trying to say that to be like, oh, Mr. Frey, you're so good. No, it's a function of time. And in your case, I don't know, how much do you practice on a regular basis?
Not enough.
Okay, well, that's a good, honest question. So, I mean, quantify it for me. In a week.
In a week? Well, with this semester schedule, maybe 6 hours at most.
Okay, so that's less than an hour a day.
Yeah.
So that's you realize how long is that going to take you to get to 10,000 hours?
That's a lot of time.
Oh, it's going to take you forever, man.
8 or 9 years, maybe?
close, man. Oh, are you good at math?
I'm a music major.
I know. Let's do this real quick. So you said how many hours a week? 6.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to give them credit for 50 weeks a year. Okay? Okay? That gives you 2 full weeks of vacation. You might take more.
Yeah.
So that's 300 hours in a year. Okay? So let's just do 10,000. Actually, you know what? I'm going to be nice. We'll say you're going to get it at the 9,000 point. That's how many years? Years? Oh. 30.
Wow.
Okay. So you need to make some changes if that's what you want to do. Okay. So these are the things. You guys should do your calculation. Where are you along the lines? If you're, freshman, sophomore, and you're, doing an hour and a half a day, 2 hours a day, that's only twice what he's done. So that's 600. So that means you got 15 years at that rate. Have fun. Okay. The other concept that's really great on this, my teacher before Malcolm Gladwell wrote his book, he made us do all 12 scales. And in high school, I didn't have to do B major, and so I didn't. And he was like, "You have to play B major scale." I was like, oh. So I practiced, messed it up, came back the next week, messed it up again. And he just sort of got very stern and looked at me and he's like, "You realize that you're going to have to learn this." And he said, "You've got 2 choices. Let's say that it takes you 1,000 positive repetitions to learn B major. Your choice is either to drag it out over the next 4 years and have me harass you about it on a weekly basis, or go do it over the next 2 weeks." And I was like, "I'm really tired of you harassing me about the scale. I'll do it." So that's what I did. I didn't do 1,000, but I did enough to get it right. So, there has to be a time commitment. The other thing that you want to realize is that we want to be full-time musicians, okay? So how much work does a full-time worker do in a week?
40 hours.
40, before Obamacare. Sorry, I couldn't resist. It was too easy. 29 and a half after. I'm sorry for anyone who's been affected by that. So 40 hours a week divided by 7 days.
That's 8 hours a day.
Actually, it's a little bit under 6.
Okay.
That's okay.
I'm not good enough.
I know. That's good. So that means you're going to get 5 and a half to be full-time. And the other concept that they talk about is if you want to be something, you need to live it. So, that's a big thing for you in regards to time seems to be your major thing. But then also being intelligent about what you're doing. Okay? When I started, I got very efficient about practicing in grad school. I had a lesson with a guy named Howard Snell, who's the original trumpet player on the Star Wars soundtrack, just so you know. And anyway, he said, "You need to record your entire 5-6 hours of practice because I know about you because you're this American guy that everybody talks about that practices too much and wakes everybody up in the dorm." And anyway, and he said, "I want you to go back and listen to it and listen to when you're not, or when you're actually working on something that you need to work on." And it ended up being, I don't know, 2.5 hours. Okay, so I was a little bit depressed about the 3.5 hours that I was wasting, but at least I got good face time from it. But then I got much more efficient about things. So that's a thing for you to think about. Okay, all right. So we need to move on to the next student, but I really, really appreciate it, and I hope that you get some good things and make a time commitment change because that's going to be needs to be huge for you. Yeah. Okay. Excellent. Thank you very much.